Sunday's shooting death of Daunte Wright at the hands of police in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota has sparked an outpouring of anger across the country. This tragic killing unfolded only about 10 miles from the trial of Chauvin, who is facing murder charges for the death of George Floyd.
So let's bring in the U.S. Senator from Minnesota, Tina Smith. Welcome, Senator Smith. We appreciate your time today. We heard from the city's police chief saying that this was an accidental discharge, that the officer in question meant to use her handgun, not a taser. A lot of people hear that. They saw the video and they're scratching their heads. How does that happen? And I'm curious, Senator, what you think the consequences should be.
Well, I think you're right. A lot of people are asking, how could that happen? The reality is that this was a fatal error, and the family and people who loved Daunte Wright don't have him anymore. The big picture here is that we have an epidemic of Black people dying at the hands of law enforcement in Minnesota and around the country, and we cannot stand for that. Everybody should be safe and feel safe and be safe in their homes and in their neighborhoods and in their communities, and that is not the case for too many Black people who see a traffic stop like what was faced by Daunte Wright ending up in the loss of life. It's completely unacceptable.
And Senator, you mentioned there a fatal error, and it was talked about as a fatal mistake. Is that what you see it as, and some kind of an outlier or a separate type of incident from many of the incidents we've seen of Black people dying at the hands of police over the past couple of years?
Well, specifically, we know that there have been other examples, other experiences of people losing their loved ones because an officer said that they thought that they were firing a taser when in fact they were firing a handgun. The systemic problem is, why is it that in Brooklyn Center, for example, a wonderful community, that since 2012, 6 people have been killed by police, 5 of them were men of color. Why is it that systemically in this country, interactions with law enforcement for Black people are more often a source of fear and even harm than they are protection? In this country, Black people tell us over and over again that they feel underprotected by law enforcement and over-policed. And that's the systemic challenge that we have got to resolve in this country at the federal level. It's why I have pushed so hard for the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act and other pieces of legislation that I've authored that would help local communities like Brooklyn Center to move forward with real innovations in public safety that truly would keep everybody safe.
Senator, you just mentioned some of the laws, or certainly some of the changes you'd like to see at the federal level. I'm sure there are changes that need to happen at the local level, but what more can be done at this point to stop, as you put it, this epidemic of Black people dying at the hands of law enforcement?
Well, we have to understand that there is a systemic problem in policing that we need to resolve, and that's what the Justice and Policing Act, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, would do. It would ban some of the most dangerous and egregious excessive use of force that we see in law enforcement. And it would also provide much more accountability so that we can make it easier to hold law enforcement accountable when they use excessive force. There are also great examples at the local level of what communities are doing to change the way they think about policing, and so that it is less about violence and control and more about protection. And I'd like to be able to see those new models for policing get support and help, and that's what my bill would do. We cannot say in this moment, oh, there's nothing that we can do. This is just this is something we have to live with. This is a unique problem that we have in this country that we have got to see and address and resolve.
And man, we're talking here a lot about policing, but what can you do? Your state, in particular, the Minneapolis area, has been called in some circles one of the worst places in the country for Blacks when it comes to disparities of income, home ownership, poverty. And so this has been bubbling up for years and years and years. How do you address that? And not just with a bill on policing, which many people say that George Floyd Act doesn't have a chance in the Senate anyway, but what do you do to help your home state get past what is, like the NAACP president there called it, the Jim Crow of the North? What do you do about that?
Well, you are sadly correct that Minnesota has some of the worst disparities in home ownership, in wage gaps, in wealth gaps that we see any place in the country. the first thing that we have to all do is to see that in Minnesota. And of course, this is not just a Minnesota problem. This is something that happens everywhere in our country. We have to understand that there are systems, for example, in housing and home ownership that hold people of color back and make it almost impossible for them to build the wealth and build the opportunity that white communities and white families have. We know what to do here. It's not as if we have no idea what to do. We just have to muster the will to make it happen in my home state of Minnesota and all over this country.
All right. Senator Smith, I know we're going to see you down the road, and we're going to be talking about these issues probably down the road because they're not going away anytime soon. So we thank you for your time, and really our hearts go out to your state and particularly that area around Minneapolis that's in pain right now and what we've seen in the streets over the past couple of days. But thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Well, hey there, GMA fans. Robin Roberts here. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Lots of great stuff here. So go on, click the subscribe button right over here to get more of awesome videos and content from GMA every day, anytime. We thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the morning on GMA.